trust has to be built in order to play. They're trying to play on the edges, and they haven't built the foundation. In that deeply intimate state, it's almost hypnotic. What you say there matters. Your arousal is just making your smart brain leak out between your legs. So I say that you're smart, but your arousal is making you into a dumb slut for me. Women deeply need to be found beautiful. It's an important aspect of their identity and being desired as a woman.
Our question comes from Paul today, who has been with his girlfriend for a few months. His girlfriend revealed to him recently that she has been the victim of sexual assault multiple times and that she now realizes she enjoyed it. Her ex-boyfriend, who was emotionally and physically abusive to her, found out about her sexual assault, and this excited him and led to them having CNC kink play. She consented to being drugged and made unconscious, at which point her ex-boyfriend would have sex with her. Paul now writes and says that his girlfriend wants him to treat her like a worthless object and have sex with her accordingly, including various CNC scenarios. He states, without getting into specifics, that his girlfriend has other habits and mannerisms that seem to suggest that she has extremely low self-esteem. Paul is very kink positive and doesn't want to rush to judgment, but he is genuinely concerned about where his girlfriend's past unresolved trauma ends and her legitimate healthy kink needs begin.
Challenging scenario, for sure. One of the things for Paul to do is to figure out his own limits. That's a big, important thing. For me personally, and degradation, humiliation is probably my number one kink. Me personally, my limit is anything that is not framed in a way of building up my sub as I humiliate her. So I might say something like, "You're such a good girl to let yourself be worthless for me." Now, I actually personally, using the word worthless would be a hard limit for me. I actually am not okay with that personally. But if I were to use it, that's the most I would do, because it's framing her willingness as a positive. It's framing that it's for me, it's for our intimate relationship. It's not a global statement. I similarly have limits around things like fat or ugly. Women deeply need to be found beautiful. It's an important aspect of their identity and being desired as a woman. That's woven in so deeply into our cultural norms and biological norms that I don't think there's a way to do that. Okay, let me put it this way. I don't know of a way to do that in a way that I don't find fundamentally like I'm tearing down the person without building them back up again. I have played with things like dumb, calling a girl dumb, but I framed that whenever I use that kind of degradation in the form of your arousal is just making your smart brain leak out between your legs. So I say that you're smart, but your arousal is making you into a dumb slut for me. And that framing, then I think, and I believe these things are important, is that in that deeply intimate state, it's almost hypnotic. What you say there matters. And so she had these negative experiences of sexual assault, but enjoyed them sexually, because she probably had this pre-existing kink that, this natural kink we've talked about before in other episodes, but then had an ex-boyfriend that found out about it and basically re-traumatized the same thing by playing on what is a genuine kink need, but then using that space to reinforce negativity about her worthlessness, making what was a journey to the shadow just into reality. And so Paul, unfortunately, has some work to do here to say, hey, look, that's just not true. Just because you enjoy power play and CNC and degradation and whatever else doesn't mean that these things are genuinely true. Hey all, this is Athos. If you're enjoying this content and you'd like to see more, please be sure to spank that subscribe button. It's been very naughty. And if you'd like to have your question answered on the show, please feel free to ask us by email at deeperkink@gmail.com or click the link in the description below to complete the form. Now, back to the show. Just because you enjoy power play and CNC and degradation and whatever else doesn't mean that these things are genuinely true. They are feelings, they are worries, fears. I'm sure she feels like she's worthless at times. And there are ways to engage with that feeling without reinforcing it by saying, I'm going to let you feel worthless right now as a gift to you, right? But we have to come back from the shadow at the end. Is that actually, and again, context matters. If this is a casual relationship, his options are very limited. If they've been married for 10 years, well, okay, they're not married, but if they were married for 10 years, there would be very many other scenarios in that you can say you're not worthless because you're worth something to me. That's open in all the scenarios. You can get edgier in a marriage and say, aren't you glad I married you? Because otherwise you'd be worthless, but now you have value, you have worth. That's pretty edge play there. That you're flirting with disaster. And I'm not saying you shouldn't flirt with disaster, but you got to be very careful when you're on the edge like this. Yeah.
One of the takeaways, one of the things that stood out for me in the question was how he said that his or her ex-boyfriend was emotionally and physically abusive to her. And I think that's everything, in my opinion, hinges on these words. The way that I looked at this question, because Paul's asking, what do I do with this? This is the situation I'm in. This is the person I'm with. And she wants CNC. She wants me to do all these things. And what he's struggling with, I think what he's really asking is, should I indulge her or not? And I went back into thinking about her relationship with her ex-boyfriend. And when I read that the ex-boyfriend was emotionally and physically abusive to her, I find it very difficult to know how you would go to a CNC kink with somebody who's emotionally and physically abusive. Now, when I hear physically abusive, I'm reading that he hit her in a non-consensual way. I think when you use the word abuse, what's implied is that this is all non-consensual. So if she consented to being degraded and then he does that, then that's not abuse. But if the word abuse is being used, inherent to that word is that there isn't a consent to being treated that way. So if that's how he was treating her, I don't know that you can go from that to CNC and call it healthy. And Paul apparently is not emotionally abusive. He's being very thoughtful about this whole situation. And he's like, well, this is what she wants. So I really pursue it. I think if I was in his place, I would tell her that, listen, lady, you need some therapy. You've got issues. I feel that if I were to engage with CNC with you, given your makeup, I might be just perpetuating problems as opposed to really solving them. He's really going to be playing with fire here if he's going to go forward with CNC play with a person like this.
Yeah, I agree. I will say CNC is... Okay, by the way, a lot of things fall under CNC that are not what I think of with CNC. So, for instance, I've talked to several women who said they were into CNC, and when I said, what does that mean to you? What does that look like? What are these things? It actually came out to be something more like free use. I think that's a very common crossed wire in the phrasing here. What I would call true CNC, or rape play, basically, is a very different frame here. So, yeah, I think there's also some questions I have about what are we really talking about here? If we're really talking about rape play, again, not my kink, so I don't have much experience with it. I'm not super into rape play personally, but it does seem like he would be playing with fire for sure. In particular, one way to put that is I don't know that he could trust her to use her safe word appropriately.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And that is the trust that a dom needs to be able to give a sub is, will you use this if you need it? And if you won't, then we can't play that way, or at all, in fact. And so, yes, I have definitely been on dates with women where I got the feeling that this person would not use their safe word correctly. They would be too caught up, too scared to defend their own boundary in a healthy way. And I refused to play with them, or refused to have sex with them in general, actually. Just because even just quote-unquote normal sex, I just didn't trust that they were able to consent appropriately, or not consent, or withdraw consent appropriately. I think that trust has to be built in order to play. They're trying to play on the edges, and they haven't built the foundation.
Yeah,
right?
That's a good way of putting it. Absolutely.